uneven. Okay, I want to emphasize the growth is uneven. Look at this. Who is growing more? Developing countries growing more than the global north countries. Higher growth rate. The first mover in the developing group, NIC. Before China, right, joined the bandwagon of economic development, there was a handful of formerly poor states called newly industrializing countries, NICs. And they began with successful capital accumulation. They are semi-periphery countries. Light manufactured goods. Right? NICs were specializing in light exported goods. Most successful ones were called Four Tigers or Four Dragons of East Asia: Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore. Though they have different political profiles, right? Different political profiles. Korea, Taiwan, their political profile highly divided, right? Korea is divided between two, right? Two Koreas. Taiwan, again, it's not politically unified country. Hong Kong, Singapore, on the other hand, they make the most of their geography, their location. Okay, their location is very favorable to function as a hub, financial and trading hub. That's how they grew. So at the end of the day, looking at different, countries in the developing group, unclear whether, what general lessons can be drawn from different countries. See, this is how much South Korea achieved. Look at that, right? Although we have more and more question marks about the sustainability of South Korean economy. Right? Chinese experience, how China grew. 1.3 billion people. I think size matters. So it's a whole different ball game, right? Korea, China, if you compare these two countries, just simply given the size, China has a totally different country we're talking about. The past 2 decades, 1990s, in the decade of 2000s, China was the fastest growing economy, more than 2-digit economic growth rate, although it is a little bit slowing down. Growth rate is slowing down a little bit, but over the past 2 decades, more than 10% economic growth rate. Right. Formerly, I think China was strictly controlled by the center, right? State-planned economy. Everything owned by the government, the state. And, iron rice bowl. State guarantees employment, right? You're never fired by people. That's communist economy. Deng Xiaoping came in, right? He instituted economic reform plan from the southern coastal area. So Deng Xiaoping instituted new economic reform plans out of the centrally planned economy, right? And I compared China, Russia, right? how China and Russia were different as a sort of in terms of exit strategy from the communist system. The exit was so different, right? Exit in terms of sequencing. If you want to change the system, centrally planned system, you have two options. In terms of sequencing, you want to first change the political system first, or economic system first. But Russia, China, they had different sequencing. Okay? Russia handled the political system first. Russia opened up politically first, then economically later. I think that China the other way around. China first, economy, then holding political system, right? We have only two cases, but the outcome is so different, right? Free economic zones, right? Open southern coastal area to foreign investment. And that foreign economic zones were run on market principles. So technically that area was run by capitalist economy. That's how China began to rise. And if you read this textbook I think provides three options for developing countries. Either you have foreign investment, or debt, lending, right? Or foreign assistance. The way China rose was through foreign investment. Okay, that's how China is different from other countries. China is not that like a based economy, right? China is based on foreign investment, right? Particularly those southern coastal area, free economic zone. North Korea is trying to copy that. North Korea is trying to copy that. But like I said, the Russian example, the sequencing was politics first, opening politics first. Okay, China, opening economy first, so that after they opened up economy, they still have remaining social and corruption, all these problems. Politics is always is lurking behind as a variable in China. Tiananmen Square was a good example, 1989. Though since then politics is suppressed so far, but still many point out that Chinese economic reform at some point will be hijacked by some potential political disruptions. Okay? So Tiananmen Square. So Chinese strategy is quite unique in the sense that China is trying to combine market economy with communist politics. Communist Party. Communist Party is still there. There is only one party in China. There is no party other than Communist Party. So this is a very unusual situation, unique exception in history. Nowhere outside China has this been tried, only in China. So this is a policy of combining economic reform with political orthodoxy meaning communist system. Asian financial crisis and global financial crisis, China was able to get around. Okay, because China is not subservient to heavy financing from global financial market. Right? Like I said, there are three types: foreign investment, or debt, or foreign assistance. Right? China is foreign investment, not debt. That's how they get around financial crisis. The previous leader, Hu Jintao, and under Hu Jintao, China joined WTO. And Global South. I mean, after China became a member of WTO, China is forming an alliance with major Global South countries in challenging the global trading system. Right. There's a big question as to, right, market economy. How long market economy can, live with political authoritarianism or dictatorship. India is different story. India, right? India is democracy. More prestige. The rise of China, the buzzword. The rise of China has become a buzzword in international politics. The impact of the rise of China on international politics. G2, we're talking about G2. Global politics is divided between China and the United States. So more and more prestige and power. Okay. Skip that. The map here. I'm going to mention a little bit about the rise of China and Russia-China relations, the importance of that. Let me mention that after we have finished this chapter. India again, large country, and economic growth has been quite impressive. And Indian economic growth rate hovering around 7%, 1996, 2008, right up to the global financial crisis. Right, India, China, we talk a lot about that. Two important factors, India, China. The trajectories of India and China, the impact of that will be very huge. Not simply China. I mean, India is following, right? China. Again, the Indian economy was based also on the communist system, but modeled after not China, but the Soviet Union. India, Soviet, they're close friends, allies for many decades. The kind of Indian economic growth over the last 2 decades, they have developed a niche market particularly in service and information sector, because they use English, right? They make the most of their language ability, so they provide call center service for major Western companies. So service and information sector, that's, you know, where Indian companies are active currently. Unlike China, India has a democratic government. This is the difference, right? India, they have a democracy. Although they have a lot of problems. And there's a figure in the textbook comparing the development, economic development of China and India. India seems to following very closely China, although the measure was infant mortality and fertility rate. In both respects, China, India, very close in terms of economic development. So India is catching up very quickly with China. Might overtake. Nobody knows yet. Might overtake, right? And if India overtook China, the implication of that, you know that this is all politics, right? America, looked from America, right? There's China, right? And China is challenging the American supremacy. Then India is catching up with China. Then seen from America, what would you do? You will help India, right? You will help India. You will help India grow economically and politically. That's exactly what America is doing. So when American president visits India, that's the purpose. That's the purpose. So that the U.S. Encourages, you know, Indian economic growth, so that India can challenge China. Right? That's exactly what's happening. This is an interesting terminology. If you read the textbook says that in economic development, China used dominance model, dominance principle. And India relied on identity principle. Yes, here. China relied on the dominance principle, and India relied on the identity principle. Read that, okay, the difference. Keep that in mind. And another aspect of Indian and Chinese economic growth is India, China provide a very interesting experimentation for economic theory. In other words, there are two competing theories of economic development. Some argue that authoritarian government help development, economic development, right? So if China achieves sustainable economic development, this is proven. This is proven. Okay? But like I said, if China trips over at some point politically, then I think Indian model will prove to be much more efficient and legitimate. So should we wait until a certain point where all this is proven? Probably. So if India continues to succeed, then clearly authoritarian government is not a precondition. So this is the figure I mentioned. the comparison of China and India in terms of infant mortality rate and fertility rate. So China and India, they are closing the gap in many respects. Then after India, we go around different other examples, much more messy types of examples. So general lesson is much more difficult to draw if you look at other experiments. So, you know, there are many other sizable third world, poor developing countries. They all pursue various development strategies. And outcome is also mixed. Best results, right? If you see, the best results have come from the Asian group. That's why people say economic development comes with some cultural, right? Some cultural underpinnings or some cultural preconditions, or political development also. I mean, there was that argument also in terms of why Western economies did much better than Asian economies. Again, cultural argument was there. Maybe also geography, even weather, right? If you consider some particular groups of developing countries, I think weather matters. Weather, right? Different weather patterns have different economic outcomes, right? Geography, location, weather. Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand. Again, these are also better performing groups. Okay, they are also Asian, from Asian culture. Vietnam also. Bangladesh, Pakistan. Latin America, Mexico, and Africa. From Latin America, particularly Brazil, Mexico. From Africa, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and Democratic Congo. Middle East. About Middle East, there was a, you know, the special problems facing Middle Eastern countries, right? Resource curse problem, right? Resource curse problem, and you know, exporting manufactured goods or exporting raw materials. That itself, in and of itself, has a huge impact on economic development, political development. But like I said, resource abundance is more of a, if you average all the outcomes out, right? Resource abundance is more of a blessing or curse? It's a curse. That's what many statistical data point to. Okay, some are good, but right, if you consider many different examples, resource abundance is more of a curse than a blessing. So this is it, common themes. What are common themes or what are common lessons, right? And one of these common lessons I gave you, resource abundance is a bad thing, right? Maybe 70% bad thing, resource abundance. That's one of common themes, one of common themes, and one of common lessons. And democracy or dictatorship, which is better, we are holding it for a while. Okay, holding it. we don't know yet. Okay, we need more testing. Whether democracy helps or dictatorship helps, we need to wait a little bit. And India, China, good experiments for that. Good experiments. Foreign investment, very important. Foreign investment, very important. Debt, that probably not. Probably not. Foreign assistance, we'll cover that in a little bit. Foreign assistance. But foreign assistance or overseas development assistance, more officially, ODA. How much of a difference ODA or foreign assistance can make in terms of helping, in terms of raising the level of developing countries, there was a huge disappointment, disenchantment about Western economic assistance, foreign assistance, or ODA. And that'll come later, okay, in the later part of this chapter. Right. Trade is important. Capital accumulation. Capital accumulation. But capital accumulation, we discussed this. Capital accumulation, for capital accumulation, you need trade. Right? You need trade. Manufactured trade better than raw materials trading. Right? This is one of the general principles. Authoritarianism, holding it, we don't know yet. Corruption, very bad. Corruption, very bad. A huge, huge obstacle. Raw materials encourage corruption. Right? Raw materials encourage corruption. And ODA, I think ODA has some link to corruption. Over the last several decades, ODA has failed. ODA has failed. The reason being that there are different types of ODA, different types of foreign assistance. State-to-state bilateral, multilateral, and private. Private foreign assistance, Western aid, is now being tested, okay? Because state-to-state, multilateral, they all have problems regarding corruption and inaccountability, these problems. So we are more and more entering the field of private ODA, private type of ODA. Okay, import substitution. We discussed that, right? For trade surplus, import substitution. We need to go over a little quickly. So definition, the development of local industries, right? Local industries. This goes against the principle of comparative advantage. And import substitution is not proven effective. Okay, not in all cases. Okay. Nix relied on export-led growth. Capital movement between North and South countries. There are three forms. There are three forms of North-South capital flows. Either foreign investment, debt, or foreign aid. Foreign assistance. There are three types. And if you study more, you might want to know the figures right? The figures and different, right, flows between different regions, right? But borrowing from developing countries, interesting. Borrowing is a bigger portion of money for developing countries. This is I think, one of the serious problems facing the global economy. Debt, global debt problem for developing countries. Many developing countries are indebted because they can't host foreign investment, right? Foreign aid is a little bit different matter. But many developing countries, if possible, they have to, right, rely on foreign investment. But foreign investment requires many different things. So that's why they sort of go to debt. What is foreign investment? Investment in capital goods by foreigners. This is the definition. Mostly by multinational corporations, MNCs. This is how they get the capital accumulation started. Like I said, foreign investment was key to Chinese growth. Foreign investment, right? That was key. And there was a number for that. How much foreign investment in China? There was a number for that, several pages before. Some nuts and bolts about foreign investment. Foreign investors, they own the facilities. It's not like a money market investment, right? This is a real facility investment. We're talking about FDI, right? Foreign direct investment. It's not portfolio investment. So there are two types of foreign investment. Foreign direct investment, which is this textbook is talking about foreign direct investment. It's about facility, factories, right? Employing people, right? So this is foreign direct investment. Portfolio investment is a different thing. So foreign direct investment is about owning facilities, okay? Owning facilities. So through foreign investment, they take profits from the operation of those facilities. Those facilities. So it's a split of profits. Split of profits between the government and multinational corporations. Right. The best example is Western energy companies. Their investment in Middle Eastern countries. Right? It's a split of profits. Split of oil products. Oil production is split between multinational corporations and Middle Eastern governments. Right? So naturally, this host government, they have fear about control by multinational corporations. That's a problem about foreign direct investment. So host government can charge fees and taxes, right? And they lease land and drilling rights about energy development investment. In the case of energy development investment. So the issue is, right, who gets more, right? Who gets more, that's the issue. in the beginning stage, clearly Western major corporations, they had bigger share of profits, right? Like for instance, 10% to host government, Saudi Arabia, 10%, 90% American oil company. Very unequal, like a type of foreign direct investment, unequal type of agreement in the very beginning. But over time, more and more ratio for the Saudi government, right? Over time. So that's that shows, that's a good example, right? And right, still there are some questions raised about the value of foreign direct investment for developing countries. Some argue that not every foreign investment is good for developing countries, right? So some fears still remain from global South countries regarding foreign investment. So developing countries, they want to lower, right, the control by multinational corporations. So joint venture is a good like a sort of a format, right? Mutually beneficial type of operation. That's joint venture, right? Joint venture. What are they looking for? Multinational corporations, when they make foreign investment, they look at these different things. The regulatory environment must be, right, sound and transparent. They like transparency. Western people, they like transparency, right? More than anything else, transparency is important, right? Although numbers and data become open, but what would you do if these numbers are like massaged? If numbers are not real, right? That's another problem. But at least information must be released transparent. That's important for foreign investors, right? And stability, including political stability, right? That's what they like. And also tax. Tax is important. Low tax. Tax must be favorable to foreign investors, right? And labor market. Labor market is important. Labor market. Labor market must be very flexible. Labor market should be flexible. Technology transfer. This is what the developing countries like to have. Technology transfer. This is what most developing countries would like to have by hosting foreign investment. Technology transfer. Because, again, energy investment example. You know, many Korean companies and also many developing countries, including Middle Eastern countries, they have resources, but they don't have technology. Drilling and processing technology, many Middle Eastern countries do not have, right? So what many developing Middle Eastern oil-producing countries, what they wanted from American Western oil companies was technology transfer. Okay, invite them and lease lands and drilling rights, then dig up the oil and gas, bring it out of the country, but leave some technology for us. so that we can copy that for later use, for energy independence. That's what most sort of developing energy producing countries wanted. Technology transfer. That's technology transfer. Brain drain. Brain drain is sort of a best way of copying Western technology. Sending young, like college and graduate students to overseas schools so that they can learn advanced knowledge and technology. But they don't come back. That's brain drain. Right? That happens a lot in many developing countries. That is borrowing money. Borrowing money. Many developing countries actually borrow money from rich countries. This is reality, right? So they try to host foreign investment, right? But if foreign investment is not enough, they borrow money. That's debt. A lot of developing countries, they borrow money. How much? There is an interesting figure. Page 479, last paragraph, and also table 13.1. The Global South, they owe $3 trillion. Global South countries. The amount of debt of the Global South to the Global North is $3 trillion. Almost the same amount America spent on the war on Iraq. America spent $3 trillion in Iraq. So almost same amount developing countries are indebted to Global North countries. And so $3 trillion came out of rich countries, sort of a landing in developing countries in the form of debt. But from developing countries to the Global North, interest payment for this $3 trillion, $1 trillion interest payment, going from developing countries to the Global North countries. Okay, so interest payment is also huge. So borrowing money is an alternative to foreign investment. Right? But if you borrow well, that helps. That helps economic development. And many Latin American countries, they did this in the 1970s and early 1980s. The way Latin American debt problem broke up was that in the late 1970s, many Latin American economies, Brazil, Mexico, they had huge development projects in Latin America, okay? And they needed money, okay? So they went to many American commercial banks, okay? And commercial banks lent money, huge sums of money to Latin American economies. And where did these American commercial banks get this money? They got this money from Saudi Arabia. Okay? It's kind of interesting. America imported Saudi oil, okay? And America gave payment, did the payment to the Saudi government. Then Saudi redeposited to American commercial banks. And these American commercial banks lend this money to Latin American developing countries. This is how developing countries' debt problem occurred. So it's sort of a circulation of petrodollars. But when you lend money not simply between government to government, but even person to person. When you lend money, you need to make sure. You need to make sure that the borrower will return it, right? But many American commercial banks, they didn't do the right calculation, because many projects in Latin America at that time, over time, resulted in huge fiascos. So American commercial banks, they gave up on this money. Okay, they simply forgot about it. Same thing. Korean economy, why Korean economy was difficult? Because many government-owned banks, they didn't, carefully calculate the ability of these borrowers. In other words, Korean Jabil corporations. Korean Jabil corporations, they borrow huge sums of money from Korean banks, but not based on business prospect, but based on political order from the government, right? So Jabil, Korean Jabils, they had a high level of debt ratio, right? Even today, they have a high level of debt. Right up to Asian financial crisis, 1997, right? They kept borrowing and borrowing money from Korean banks. In fact, the Korean government, right? But when the Asian financial crisis happened, their real problem sort of laid open to everyone. So many Korean, including Daewoo, they got bankrupt. And today, I think there are many symptoms that Korean economic situation, particularly some Jabil corporations today, they are repeating some scenarios of 1997 financial crisis. Because some corporations are going bankrupt today already. Same problems. So borrowing money, if you use it well, it's a good thing. But in many developing countries' cases, it ends up with just that. Okay? Right. Borrowing has advantages and disadvantages. These are the advantages. These are the disadvantages. You have to pay back, right? In order to pay back, your projects must be making profits, right? Your projects. Then you default, right? That's default. Or renegotiate the debt. So the debt problem still remains for many developing countries. Now, this is the Latin American countries, the foreign debt amount $835 billion, 25% of GDP. Asian countries, about 1 trillion, 17%. Africa, 250, Middle East, 350. Look at the debt service amount, yearly debt service amount. Particularly high for Latin American countries, because Latin American countries are more risky than others. Interest level higher than others. It's not free. There's no free lunch, right? If you look at this. You can borrow, but you must be paying back. IMF conditionality. We have International Financial Organization, IMF, and IMF, they also lend money. Okay? IMF lend money. This is a good source. This is a good source for many developing countries. It was a useful source also for Korea. But Korea used it well. IMF borrowing, Korea used it well. But IMF money comes with many conditions. That is IMF conditionality. That is IMF conditionality. In other words, Western economic standards. If you borrow money from IMF, you need to meet Western economic standards. What are these? Right. Before we get to what are IMF conditionalities in much more detail, IMF money is an important source for funding, right? Particularly early stages of accumulation in developing countries. IMF conditionality agreement must be signed. Then there must be some. This policy is called structural adjustment program. This is otherwise called structural adjustment program. Okay, if you borrow money from IMF, you need to sign and subscribe to structural adjustment program. Right? And these agreements are politically hated by many developing countries, including Korea, right? Because many of standards they require are very different from economic conditions in the global south, including Korea. Then what are these conditions they require? Just a second. Where are these conditions? Come on. Oh, okay. They don't have it here. Here, page 480. About in the middle, in return, IMF demands that first, inflation be brought under control. IMF likes low inflation. IMF likes low inflation. This is Western standard. Okay, Western functioning economy, they don't have high inflation. Inflation must be under control. These are one of the conditions, very important condition. Control of inflation, very important condition for IMF. Second, reducing state spending. Reducing state spending, very important condition. They don't like government spending money effusively, right? Very important condition. Government should save. And third, closing budget deficit. Same thing. If government saves spending, then budget deficit will lower. So these are three essential conditions. Very important conditions, which is difficult to implement in many developing countries. Now, then South-North economic sort of relations. I think this textbook begins with the assumption that the current global economy, divided between global south and global north, somehow favorable to the global north. Right? Favorable to the global north. So to level the playing field, I think there are several things that must be done. Number one, trade must be, global trade system must be much more, in this case, global trading system must be much more fair than free. Okay? So what is important is not just free trade, but fair trade. Fair trade. The global trading system, particularly the WTO system, must be open, must be free, yes. But in addition to that, global trading system, WTO, must be much more fair. To engage global south countries, right? So dispute settlement system, they talk about dispute settlement system and everything, right? To make a much more fairer global trading system. Number two, why global economy is still favorable to the global north? Second reason is what? Many developing countries are still specializing in raw materials exports. That's number two reason. Particularly OPEC countries. So, these global south countries, they formed new international economic order. It's a coalition of developing countries to rectify this unfair global economic system. Under the new international economic order, there are several important things. There must be a shift in the terms of trade. Okay? The terms of trade must be shifted to favor primary commodities exporters relative to manufactured exporters. Okay? But, you know, there have been many calls for this, but just empty rallying cry in many cases. Yet, still. So currently, I think countries in the global south, they continue to pursue proposals to restructure the global economic system to benefit the South, but these requests are made mostly within the boundary of UN Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD. Okay, this is the agenda for UN Conference on Trade and Development. But such efforts have done little to change the world so far. Now, foreign assistance. Foreign assistance, officially overseas development assistance, ODA. Definition is money made available to developing countries to help them speed up economic development. And for some developing countries to simply meet basic human needs. foreign assistance is the second major source of money. Okay, foreign assistance is the second major source of money for developing countries. There are different kinds of development assistance: humanitarian, political, and future economic advantages. Donor type of foreign assistance. Patterns of foreign assistance. The majority of foreign assistance is made in the form of government to government, state to state, bilateral. Okay, so it comes from governments in the north. Okay, governments in the north. And private type of aid, much smaller portion. State to state government assistance is run by the committee, Development Assistance Committee. These are several types of bilateral aid, either grants, technical cooperation, credits, loan guarantees. There are many types, or even military aid is also state-to-state bilateral aid. And USAID, U.S. Agency for International Development, that's the agency for bilateral aid making agency. They have Peace Corps. Korea has KUICA. This is the rankings of countries in terms of foreign assistance. Development Assistance Committee has a target of 0.7%. Okay, and if you look at the figure 13.6, only 5 countries exceeded the DAC target. So Norway, Sweden, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Denmark. They are the front runners in terms of foreign assistance. And America is hugely disappointing, only 0.16. 0.16. And percentage of these Western donors, assistance over time compared to the 1960s, is it going up or going down? The percentage of donors is going down in general. Now, multilateral assistance, bilateral assistance, that's that. Okay, government to government is run by DAC, and the portion is going down over time. Northern European countries are front runners, right? These are important things about state-to-state bilateral foreign assistance. Multilateral assistance is done by UN programs, okay? Mostly done by UN programs. So most of multilateral aid goes through UN programs. And many coordinated by UNDP, United Nations Development Program. They handle 5,000 different projects UNDP handle 5,000 different projects. Right? 5,000 different projects. And different programs handle different types of aid programs. So for instance, UNIDO works on industrialization issue. UNITAR, they do training and research. And UNICEF, UNFPA, UNESCO, WHO, more of a human basic needs type of program. Okay, their program is more basic needs type of program. So different programs have different specialty. Okay. There are advantages and disadvantages, right? Advantages are this, right? UN has a good image about helping the global south. And well, probably, you know, bilateral, state-to-state bilateral Western aid again has advantages and disadvantages. And this one is not discussed enough here. What's the disadvantage? What's the problem with state-to-state bilateral assistance? I mean, America is not passionate about it, right? That's a problem. Right? State-to-state foreign assistance. America is not active. That's a problem. And second problem, bilateral assistance is affected by political situation. That's another disadvantage. Political situation. And many governments, when they give out foreign assistance, they use it for political purposes. Right? That's another problem. And do you know the book White Man's Burden? Several years ago, the famous book, one of the bestsellers, White Man's Burden. The White Man's Burden. The author is William Easterly. William Easterly. Right, this book. This book is about this. This book gives an in-depth analysis of what went wrong with Western development assistance, development aid. And he criticizes many World Bank programs. World Bank programs. And I think the gist of his argument in that book was that many of the programs World Bank handle, or even UNDP program, or even some of the programs run by Great Britain, many of these Western-led, state-to-state Western aid program failed because there was an accountability problem. There's an accountability problem. When these agency, aid-making agencies, when they issue these foreign assistance, they're not accountable to how this money is spent on the ground in local conditions. They don't care how this money is spent. They just give out to UNDP or USAID or World Bank. That's it. They don't care whether this money is really trickling down to grassroots. Because their real customers are not local people in the global south. The real customers are voters in their country, right? So this is accountability problem, right? So that's why the state-level bilateral aid model is failing, and multilateral UN program is also failing. So that's why this textbook brings in new future type of aid assistance model, which is based on private aid. Private aid. This is new model. New assistance model. Private aid. What are the good things about private aid? And good role model is Oxfam America. So read about it, Oxfam America. Why Oxfam America? Their job is important in terms of new assistance model. Because it's about grassroots empowerment projects. Grassroots empowerment projects. So it resolves the accountability problem, right? I think this wraps up. So the chapter 13, and also fourth semester of 2013, international relations. Although I want to add some closing comments about what you have to do after this class. You know, we covered pretty much this semester, beginning with some theories, paradigms of IR. Then we studied war and conflicts, including my article about insurgency, right? Coin model, which is very, very new. And also we covered UN, global governance issues. Then we branched off into many different smaller topics in IP, finance, global trade, climate change, energy, then this international development and aid, global aid. My recommendation for you after this textbook, what you have to do is you specialize more in each topic by taking higher level classes, right? Although we don't have IR theories class, we have classes on probably each topic as you move on. That's what you have to do. And my more general recommendation, you know, in terms of textbook, in terms of knowledge, I think you follow this and more specialization. But there are many things we haven't covered. There are many things we covered in this class, but there are many things we haven't covered in this class. This is just textbook, you know, classic IR type of class. You know, we follow the format, right? Governance, IP, war studies, right? It's a very classic formation. But there are many international issues that come outside this boundary. How are I going to do with many international issues that get around this format? So my final recommendation for you is keep reading newspapers, right? Keep reading newspapers. Is China really rising? Okay, is China really rising? And if China rises, then what happens to Russia as a neighbor? Does Russia-China, you know, the nature of Russian-Chinese relations, why is it important for Korea? U.S. shale gas, why is it important? Right? Shale gas price is important. But shale is important, not in terms of pricing, but in terms of geopolitical impact. The way I see it, I had a lecture actually in COEX this morning. I had similar lecture. You know, the way I see the current situation here is China, right, is on the rise. That's a fact, right? Although we have to see the final destination, but China is on the rise. Russia is a different animal, right? Russia is a raw material country, raw material based country. Huge potential, right? And their type of energy is conventional type. And they want to build a huge pipeline through Korean territory, right? Linking both north and south. It's a historic phenomenon, right? Putin's proposal. Then we had U.S. shale revolution, right? And potentially America might export LNG. Huge amount, right? So Korea is in between, sandwiched between this conventional-based Russian power and unconventional-based U.S. power, right? And there is China, huge energy consumer, right? How do we broker these major different powers? I think after this class, okay, you follow this type of classic, you know, like a IR textbook type of knowledge. You need to accumulate more knowledge, but reading newspapers and reading documents and bring you up to date. Russia, China. Pay close attention to what is going on in China, what is going on in Russia, what is going on in the United States. How about Japan? There are 4 different major powers surrounding Korea. So Northeast Asia is important, okay? Add Northeast Asia to your inventory of knowledge, okay? So if you have questions, I'll be available. And particularly for those who are interested in foreign service exam, I think we should do something outside classroom. And hope to see you again in my future class. I'll be teaching IP for 3rd year class, then global resource politics for the senior. So I might not see you next semester, but I might see you if you are interested in foreign service exam. Sort of a not conventional type of class, but we might have something outside classroom. So good luck for your future studies and hope to see you someday. Thank you.